that day, the day that you were killed at my hand, you were simply playing your guitar by the side of the road, looking for any common stranger to give you a small coin. That day, you weren't making much. You were getting pennies, really. The highlight was the 2-pound coin that some suit had thrown in. But you, dear stranger, perfect stranger by the road, your day was to become a singularity of perfected awe. I watched you from the opposite bench as you strummed at your guitar, playing some twangy song with repeating chords. You were forgetting some of the chords, but it wasn't like it mattered. No one was paying any attention to you. I had been watching you for around a month, seeing how perfect your imperfectness was, and it was amazing to see how you were. After an hour or so, you decided you'd had enough. If it wasn't good at lunch, it simply couldn't get any better. You tediously picked out the money from your guitar case, putting it carefully in your pocket as to make sure not to drop them. You took the alleyway home, a small shortcut you had recently discovered, and was hoping to use it for a while. You pulled the money from your pockets, counted it out. That was when I struck. My knife plunged into your back, my hand over your mouth to muffle your moans and screams. Regardless of this, the money in your hand fell out of your palm, and the coins hit the ground, rattling as they do. The blood pouring from your back dampened my hand, coloring it red. Your body was shaking, probably from the shock. I was used to it from the others. Eventually, you stopped trying to break free and simply accepted your fate. I pulled the knife from your back and cut along your neck, piercing your throat. More blood fell onto my hand like red rain. I then stabbed into your eyes. The signature mark. This is how the police would know it was me. I took a cloth from my pocket, wiping along your lips and clothing to take away any trace of fingerprints. Then I wiped along the handle of the knife and dropped it on the floor. I moved back through the alleyway, tracing my steps. I walked back down the pavement that I had followed you. I looked back at the opening of the alleyway, and that was when I knew I would remember this day. Not because you were the first busker I'd killed, but because you had eventually accepted it, and I will remember you forever. Until I meet my own singularity of perfect awe.
The blood. 2 wolves stood on the ridgeline just beyond the edge of the trees, nearly motionless, blending into the growing evening shadows. Keller removed his gear from the back of the van, conscious the big dogs could cover the 100 meters or so between them in seconds. The pair perhaps mated, tracked his movement. Neither moved. Evergreens hid whatever remaining pack members. Emerging from the woods as the dust settled behind the van, the wolves moved enough for him to notice their presence, almost like they wanted his attention. He considered getting back into the van for safety, but the opportunity here was too good to pass up. Once in a lifetime, really. Why let a couple of dogs mess it up? Parked on a side road at the edge of the old man's property provided cover. The road was little traveled, offering a measure of security. His getaway vehicle wouldn't be spotted. Even less chance of a curious cop running the tags, finding both van and license plates stolen 2 days before. Rudy's intel was spot on. Assuming the rest of his information was correct, they would be rich before the sun rose tomorrow. Guarding the perimeter stood an 8-foot brick wall topped with cruel iron hooks facing the road to deter curious climbers. No doubt, broken glass or sharp stone lined the top as well. Anything to prevent curious climbers from gaining a handhold, taking some skin as a lesson to stay away. A design choice easily beaten with an old US Army surplus wool blanket. Turning his attention to the van, he loaded his gear into a small backpack. Wire-cutted glass cutter, one-handed reciprocating saw with carbide-tipped blade, cordless drill with an assortment of DeWalt diamond bits, an extra 12-volt battery which fit both saw and drill, a small radio signal jammer useful for defeating wireless alarms, just in case, gloves, black ski mask, and an old-school crowbar with a wedge on one end and a curved claw on the other. Its usefulness far outweighed the extra weight. He clipped a small lockpick set to his belt for quick access. Most common household locks were neutralized using picks. Rudy's intel said the security, the real security, wouldn't be installed until later in the week. Until the perimeter of the house was currently secured. Cameras over the gated front drive were currently offline. The cameras recorded, but the server which stored the data wasn't available at the time of install. The video signals weren't being recorded, meaning the images were lost as soon as the frame emptied. Someone would have to be physically looking at the monitor at the exact time he passed in front of a camera to know he was there. Permanent security staff wouldn't been regular patrols until after interior updates and server install. Keller had seen it before. Delusion of security. A show to scare would-be thieves into thinking a place had more protection than it did. Most thieves didn't have access to a security company's blueprints, build timelines, inventories, alarm codes, personal rosters, and customer databases. Keller did, through Rudy. He'd never been to jail, a complete unknown to police at any level. Keller did his homework, taking only low-risk, high-reward jobs. Smart, careful, account for trouble, be prepared when the plan goes awry. Most important, don't get greedy. More than one elite, like himself, took the ride for being greedy. Also, Keller never took small jobs. Fools and addicts robbed gas stations. That shit was strictly amateur hour. Rustling foliage broke his concentration, brought him back to the present. The rest of the pack materialized from the trees, silent as ghosts, moving single file across the road. Each wolf in turn scooted underneath a hole dug under the fence line Keller wouldn't have seen if not for the procession. While watching the strange parade, Keller abandoned his attention to climb, throwing the blanket back in the van, deciding instead to follow the wolves. If they could get under, so could he. Keller waited until after the last furry tail disappeared in the tall grass. Blackberry and honeysuckle brambles lining the brickwork to investigate. Looking the van up, adjusting his kit, and checking his surroundings one more time, still quiet. Sunset fully behind the hills now. Keller walked over to the hole. Even in the shadowy twilight, The trail was obvious. Vegetation flattened underneath paws, broken and pushed aside by large muscular bodies, formed a path pointing directly at the way in. The hole, roughly 3 feet across and 18 inches deep, appeared a well-worn path. Either security missed this glaring weakness, or they believed the wolves would guard their territory. It wasn't enough to deter him. Keller dropped his kit next to the hole. Quick and silent, like the wolves before him, he slid through the hole. Staying low, he spun, reaching back, pulling their bag behind him. The drone of late-season night bugs emerging to their mysterious rounds masked the near inaudible scrape of canvas against dirt. The wolves, once again, were invisible amongst the trees and gathering gloom. Crouching by the property's edge, Keller took a moment to put on his mask and, once situated, orient himself to the grounds. Through the evergreens, the edge of a roofline, its straight edges contrasting with nature's chaos, silhouetted against the sky the reds and deep purples of a fresh bruise. Of the house he saw nothing. Deep shadow hid his target as efficiently as it had absorbed the wolves. Not unnerved with the thought of the pack wandering somewhere near, Keller moved with grace and surety toward the house. Inside, practically unprotected, a fortune hid. Art, cultural artifacts, cash, jewelry, and raw gemstones awaited his attention. The art and artifacts stayed behind. Cash was always good. Jewelry and the raw gems could be recut, melted, shaped, and changed with know-how, or know who. Keller had spent years cultivating the right relationships. 2 weeks ago, he'd been in her place, the Night Sky, a high-end bar downtown frequented by executives, businessmen, the occasional celebrity, and those like him, people with ability, talent, looking for high-end exclusive work. Rudy traded information more often than she sold her overpriced alcohol. Flagging him over, she slid a drink he didn't order across the bar. Keller picked up the drink. Underneath lay a napkin with the word "office" written on it. Passing the bouncer at the foot of the stairs without a word, Keller headed up to Rudy's office, which overlooked the bar. The windows were double-paned, vacuum seal in between panes to prevent eavesdropping via directional microphones. Must have cost a small fortune. In her office, he sat with his back to the glass, across an impressive walnut desk, kept scrupulously clean. No paper out of place, pens neatly contained in a coffee mug with "Nightlife is the right life" declared on the side in a flowing script. No bills were out waiting to be paid, everything neat, orderly, to the point of obsession. Rudy gave nothing away for free. She breezed in after making him wait 15 minutes. Keller didn't mind. He drank his Parrot Bay coconut rum and Coke with a twist of lime. His favorite. Rudy knew her business. "Ready to make some real money?" she asked, crossing the room. No preamble with her, no "Hi, how are you, how's your mama?" Rudy didn't care. Perhaps she behaved differently with those she brokered with, but Keller was a thief. An exceptional thief, but still unworthy of banter. "What do you have in mind?" "Red diamond, various precious stones, and other museum quality artifacts you deem necessary." Keller shook his head. "Gems are hard to move. Artifacts are even worse. Someone's always looking for them." "I have a buyer lined up. All I need from you is for you to do your thing." "Who?" Keller asked, not expecting an answer. "No one you know." Keller shrugged. "Timeline?" "Security finish install in 3 weeks. After that, it's out of reach forever. Red diamonds are rare. People will notice when one disappears. Not much press about this particular stone. The Mosiev red got all the publicity. At a little over 5 carats, it's worth almost $20 million. Most are less than a carat, and there are fewer than 30 in the world. The blood of the wolf is an unmodified red, weighing in at a fighting 9.08 carats. It's nearly twice the size of the Mosiev. Buyer is willing to pay $40 million. Imagine it. Rudy's eyes sparkled with greed. She leaned forward, cheeks flushed. And we already have it sold. Bring me this stone, and it will be the last job either of us ever has to do. I'll retire to Mediterranean and you can go. Rudy waved a dismissive hand. Wherever. Split? Keller's mind reeled. 40 million was a hell on an incentive. At the usual 35%, he was looking at $14 million. 14 million! Jesus! Usual 35 for the blood. I'll move anything else you want from this job at an 80-20 split. Your favor. Why the generosity? I need this to happen. Fast. Keller crept through the undergrowth. The house loomed out of the trees. A tacky combination of stars announcing the owner possessed more money than taste. 3 stories tall, the other 2 covered wooden beams. Keller thought the style was called Fachwerk, but he always associated it with Swiss Miss hot chocolate. A Greek-inspired portico, columns and all, dominated a roundabout driveway at the front of the home. The place looked confused to Keller, but the owner is a pretentious dick, he thought. Large hedges lined the front of the property, blocking the views from many of the first floor garden windows. Why have so much glass if you were going to block all the light? Nothing about this place made sense. 2 ostentatious towers, also covered in Fachwerk, framed a palatial residence on either side. The effect made the house appear squashed between 2 Leviathans. From his vantage point in uncultivated forest, Keller could see 2 impressive concrete wolves guarding the entrance. The owner must have wanted his property to blend into the forest. Trees grew tall around the home, some dwarfing even the towers, providing ample cover for Keller to make his way to the home, sneaking underneath a hedge further concealing his presence. Keller dropped his pack to assess the window before him. There didn't appear to be any sensors or magnetic strips to sound alarm. No motion sensors, nothing. Secured with a simple thumb latch, Keller defeated in seconds. The window slid up smooth and soundless. As he turned to retrieve his backpack, Keller found himself nose to nose with the big alpha male. It stood, one massive white paw on his pack, watching him. Keller never heard it approach. The big male stepped back, away from the bag, and sat down. Keller slowly picked up the bag, murmuring soothing words, avoiding eye contact. A large ear twitched, otherwise the wolf didn't move. A night breeze moved the small hairs at the tips of the ears. Turning back to the window, slow, so slow, don't startle the 100+ pounds of tooth and claw. Keller found the female sitting on his other side. As still as her mate, Keller saw his reflection in her golden eyes. The male chuffed, and both disappeared underneath the hedge. Keller released a breath he was unaware of holding. Sooner this gig was over with, the better. Boosting himself through the now open window, he tried to forget the strange actions of the wolves. His hands were shaking. Conditioned air cooled the sweat on his body, causing him to shiver. With unsteady grip, he closed the window behind himself. The place truly was a museum. if a bit macabre for his tastes. Bestial marks lined the walls, glaring at him with savage eyes, snarling with fanged mouths. A large mammoth skeleton dominated the center of the room. Stony tusks curled toward the beamed ceiling, tufts of coarse hair sticking out here and there. Other exhibits, blades, books, an aborted fetus floating in some foul liquid, dotted the landscape of the first floor room in no apparent order. Leaving the mammoth behind him, Keller made his way to the exit. The blood was in a central viewing room, along with a sizable gemstone collection. Upstairs, according to Rudy's intelligence, finding the stone remained the top priority. Afterwards, he could browse the collection for the choicest artifacts. An iron pipe smashed across his thighs as he stepped through the doorway. Keller fell forward, banging his forehead against the hardwood floor. The pain in his legs masked the sting of the needle in his neck. As Keller blacked out, he heard a voice say, "Welcome to my home, Mr. Keller." Merciful darkness swallowed any reply. Keller awoke back outside, staring at the night sky, with no idea how long he'd been there. Unbelievable pain in his thighs clawed its way to his head with sharp stabbing fingers. Pain pulsed to the beat of his heart, which thumped mad, erratic, foaming with fear. His vision doubled, then trebled. Whatever they had injected him with left a headache which made his worst hangover warm and pleasant in comparison. "Good evening, Mr. Keller." Keller moaned, tuning his aching head to locate the source of the voice. An elderly man sat watching him, a bed across his lap, tossing a red diamond hand to hand like he was arranging the world's most expensive game of baseball. Keller assumed he was the guy who'd attempted to kneecap him. Stranger still, at his feet, Rudy was bound and gagged. "Yes, I brought your business associate here too," the old man said, following Keller's confused stare. "What are you doing? Why is Rudy here?" "I'm going to watch you two die. Taste your exquisite flesh, lick your hot blood, and howl to the heavens. You are thieves, parasites. Better than being a cannibal." "You mistake my intention. I am no such thing. I merely plan to experience your deaths, vicariously." "You're crazy." "I'm an academic, actually. A trader in rare and fine goods. However, I can't sell something I don't believe in. Do you believe in lycanthropy, Mr. Keller?" "Lycanthropy? What, like werewolves?" His head was pounding. He didn't believe his legs were broken. It hurt to move, but he could move them. For whatever reason, his captor didn't feel the need to restrain him in any way. His hands were unbound as well as his feet. Nothing prevented him from getting up and howling away from the scene other than the fear the man would use the bed again. The guy was old, yes, but didn't appear feeble. Mid-60s, body fit and muscular beneath the custom-tailored silk suit he wore. Keller knew firsthand how hard the man could swing the bed. Keep him talking until my head isn't so fuzzy, Keller thought. Then we'll see how good he is without the element of surprise. "Exactly," the man replied. "Before we go further, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Maynard Chancellor Carey. You broke into my home with intent to steal. You would have, what? Cut the blood down to sell piecemeal? Its value goes so far beyond money." "Yeah, it meant freedom to me. Early retirement. Rudy lay on the ground at Maynard's feet, watching the exchange, frightened eyes darting back and forth. Blood from a scalp wound leaked from an unseen wound on her scalp. Maynard hadn't been as gentle with her as he'd been with Keller. Early Eastern Europeans believed a person could be possessed with the spirit of a wolf. Once bitten, a possessed person became a blight on the community, terrorizing the residents, bringing death, transforming into the beast. Only silver, blade or bullet, purified the poor tortured soul, releasing them to the devil's maw. Hogwash, of course. Complete superstition. But the stone, this stone, does indeed rumor to contain the power to control Canis lupus. Feel what they feel, influence their behavior, see through their eyes. Stories of wolves acting in unnatural manners can be traced throughout Eastern Europe. Stories which corroborate the location of this diamond. The blood of the wolf. A magic diamond to control wolves? I was right the first time. The story is the possessor of the diamond eventually becomes bound to the wolf spirit within. You can trace the history of werewolf stories to the stone. Or you can seek therapy, whichever works. Ignoring this light, Maynard pointed to the shadows. They're all around us, Mr. Keller. Can you feel them? I can. I watch you park, cross my land, break into my home, all through their eyes. I felt them run. Why not let Rudy go? Simple. She's the appetizer. They feast on her, then they run you down. Maynard held the diamond to his forehead, closing his eyes. The diamond caught the low light from the campfire Maynard had built. Wolves circled the edge of the firelight. Keller saw them now, heard the near silent circling. Rudy's eyes grew wide as the big male darted into the circle of light. He clamped his teeth onto Rudy's throat, ripping it free. Rudy died, unable to make a sound. The rest of the pack swarmed around Maynard, ripping bloody pieces of Rudy free, bounding back out of the light. So good, Maynard whispered. Transfixed by the awful sight, Keller couldn't run. He rolled over, vomiting, as a wolf swallowed Rudy's fingers, delicate finger bones crunching beneath the terrible power. Mr. Keller, Maynard said, you should run. Now. Keller knew he'd never outrun the pack. Even distracted as they were with Rudy's corpse, they'd be on him before he cleared the circle of firelight. So Keller didn't run. Instead, he reached into the fire, scooping a large handful of coals, flinging them into Maynard's surprised face. Maynard screamed, a girlish, effeminate sound, tipping his chair backwards, batting at the flaming debris. Keller lunged forward, shouldering past the big female, ignoring the pain in his thighs. His blistered fingers closed around the blood. A van pulled into a full-service gas station off Interstate 81. The clerk, working nights to offset college debt, looked up to see the van parked in front of Pump 5. Guy could have gone anywhere. They were hardly busy at this hour. Walking to the driver's side, the clerk notices the guy has a large dog in the passenger seat. Hell, the whole van is filled with big dogs. The driver hands over a $100 bill with bandaged hands. Guy must have burned himself good. The clerk doesn't ask what happened, thinking it rude to pry. He don't bite, do he? The clerk asks. He does. Well, I'll stay over here. Good idea, the driver replied. Can I help you, mister? Fill it up, please. Keep the change. And get me a soda. Anything with flavor. I have the worst taste in my mouth.
Sophie is so beautiful. Oh, how I can't wait to see her again. I dream of her every night. Those blue, mesmerizing eyes. The long brown hair that goes past her sturdy, but oh, so delicate shoulders. I can't help thinking about her. Imagining her alongside me gives me, oh, so much inspiration. I remember the first time I met her at school. This year, actually. First semester, first quarter. It was in chemistry class. Funny story, actually. We sat next to each other. She was the class ace, and I was the slacker. I would try to act all cool, like around her, but she thought I was stupid and all that. Well, I eventually dropped out of class for failing the next semester, but she was switching classes anyway. At the time, my heart went out for her. The uncontrollable love has taken over me once again. Well, she had 2 classes with me in the second semester, PE and art class. I would mess around in class and try to make her laugh. She eventually started to hate me for this. I embarrassed myself in front of her, but I never got red-faced around her like I usually would. Time went by, and I eventually gave up on her because I heard she was attracted to someone else. I still loved her though, but I tried to avoid seeing her. The pain would always come back. I kept dreaming about her, but of not the usual pretty parties with flowers type deal. It would be me in a room, an old, abandoned warehouse, doing violent things to her new boyfriend while she was sleeping in a bed, but crying in her sleep. I was torturing him while he was tied to a pole. Slow, bloody torture. And he eventually died. But I took a bunch of gasoline bottles and poured it all over him and the building. Then I left the building and took off my ski mask. I had a cruel, twisted smile on my face. When I awoke, I was surprisingly calm about the dream. I couldn't honestly say it was a nightmare. I continued to go with my daily routine and went to school. When I got to my class with her, I could hear her talking with her friends about the boyfriend not coming to school today. And she didn't get a phone call on her celly, but didn't really care about it and went on. The next day, she wasn't at school. I asked one of her friends where she was. The friend told me she stayed home because her boyfriend was missing and had to get questioned by the police. I went home that day and turned on the news. They were talking about a fire that happened yesterday in an old, abandoned warehouse far from the city. At that time, I remembered my dream. It was odd, but had to be coincidence. The next day, she was back in school. She seemed sad and didn't talk to anyone. I finally went up to her and asked her what's wrong. She began to cry and told me about a dream she had of her boyfriend getting tortured and set on fire. I told her to relax and hugged her. She told me thank you for being such a nice friend and wrapped her arms around me. When looking over her shoulder, I couldn't help but wear that sinister smile across